Hi, my name is Nari. I wanted to talk about Abraham's teachings and how it relates to my recent experience. Today is Monday, December 10th, 2018, and on Friday we had an earthquake here in Alaska, and the 7.2 earthquake center was about 5 miles away from my house, and it was terrifying. I was really shaken, and I'm generally a very even keeled person. It doesn't take, um, it takes a lot to get me going, get me riled up. I'm very able to handle the things that are going around me and calmly. This was not one of those times. I was pretty freaked out when it happened. It was really, really strong, and it shook my entire house in a very violent manner, obviously, and stuff was falling all around me. And so the initial earthquake was very scary, and yeah, I tried to get out of my house, and I was having kind of a minefield of glass and stuff falling around me. The scarier part, though, was the 5 point something aftershock that happened very quickly after the initial 7.2 earthquake. And this I can almost relate to, or this is the closest that I've come to feeling what PTSD might feel like. Because while the initial earthquake was very scary, it was new and I had adrenaline going, and I was just kind of went into action. I was like, okay, what do I need to do? When the 5 point whatever hit a few minutes later, I had a very physical, almost a reaction that I couldn't control. My nervous system just, I think there was nobody around me, and I just said no, 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 and just that was even more scary because it felt like it's hard to describe. I think that it might be close to, like I said, what people who have PTSD go through. It's almost a physical reaction. It's something it's hard to control. You don't feel very in control when something like that happens. And I didn't feel very in control in my reaction to the earthquake when the second one happened. But right after that happened, I went downstairs and I called my ex-husband, the father of my kids, and he just happened to be on the phone with my son, who was on his school bus on the way to school. And the bus driver was having the kids call their parents to let them know that they were okay. And so I knew my son was okay. And, Brian asked if I was okay. And I was so not okay. And I really, really just felt like I needed somebody there right then. And he said he would come, but he was in Anchorage, which is 11 miles away from Eagle River. And because of traffic and road damage and power outages, it ended up taking him 4 hours before he could get over this way. But I was able to go and pick up my kids, and so that kind of stuff was okay. But right after I got off the phone with him, I was downstairs. He told me to get in the basement to just kind of wait, and I was freaking out, and I decided, I thought of Abraham's teachings, and she says that it's absolutely normal and we're all going to have our negative emotions, but the trick or the key is to move into a positive emotion as quickly as you can. And so I decided that I was going to count, which is something that I do when I don't want to think, or when I'm trying to relax or fall asleep, or doing a meditation while I'm driving or something like that. Just it's a way to stop thinking and focus on counting. So I did the one, kind of slow breathing and relaxing and focusing. Two, it's a very slow count, and I don't know how far I made it, but at some point I decided that I was feeling pretty strong emotions, and I was going to go ahead and let myself feel those emotions. And so I did. I just cried, and I went through the whole emotion of it until I felt like I had kind of released some of that pressure, that internal pressure. And I tried to get it together, and I decided I was going to get up and try and see if I could check for water damage and smell gas, or maybe check the house for foundational damage, just kind of assess the situation. And that was a good moment for me to be able to get out of that, I don't know, just anxious almost, you know, kind of get into a more positive like action. And after the initial earthquake, you know, over the next 24 hours, we had some 200 plus aftershocks that happened. And those, you know, growing up out with most earthquakes, I've always just kind of thought of them as, oh, cool, fun. You know, I felt a little earthquake, and that, you know, it was always almost a positive thing, like, oh, the fish tank is shaking or whatever, the water is waving. But after something like that, I was very tense every time I felt any kind of movement. And at some point I decided, because of Abraham's teaching, you know, moving into the positive, I was like, there's nothing I can do about it. Feeling anxious about it and feeling tense about it is not serving me. And if I can move into a positive feeling, that's what I need to do. So I decided that I was going to let that go, because my house had already withstood, and I had already withstood, and my children had already withstood a 7.2 earthquake, and we were all fine, and the house was fine, and everybody, all my loved ones, we were all good. So all of the subsequent aftershocks, it you know, it wasn't doing me any good to be nervous and tense about them. So I just kind of viewed them as like, oh, cool, you know, another earthquake. I decided that's how I was going to view them, and that's kind of what happened. But really, the moment that I felt like it came in, Abraham's teachings came into play the most was, it was Friday that it happened, and I had an appointment to go in on Friday to go and have this kind of like a rash thing taken. You know, I needed to have that taken, or have that evaluated. And I had called them a couple times that morning. It was probably 1 or 2 p.m. before I realized, you know, I think I was in denial. The whole city, like everything shut down in Anchorage, Eagle River, and Wasilla, which is where my appointment was, all shut down. And I was freaking out about the earthquake, but at the same time I was like, oh, I need to get into this appointment because I think it might be shingles. You know, somebody had mentioned something about shingles, and I did a quick Google search, and that was really the only rash that looked like what I had. And I figured out that maybe I wasn't going to be able to get in that day at this point, so it was 1 or 2 p.m. And so I Googled it, and I said, is this something that's imminent? Do I need to have it taken a look? You know, do I need to go in right away? And I did say that if you can't get into the office or your provider the same day, then you should go into urgent care or the emergency room to have it taken, to have, you know, someone take a look at it. And so at this point, I'm like, this might be serious. Like, shingles could have like nerve damage and serious pain. And is today the day? Do I really need to go into an emergency room after we just had a 7.2 earthquake for this shingles that I might have? I didn't even know if that's what it was. I just thought maybe it was. It seemed to be the closest match visually to the rash that I had. And I stressed pretty good about this for a few minutes. You know, I don't think it was longer than 5 minutes. But at some point I decided, you know what? My kids are safe. We're in my house. I've had this thing for a couple of days now. I just now thought maybe, you know, it might be shingles, you know, based off of looking at pictures of rashes online. And the symptoms that I was feeling were starting to subside, and these were starting to heal up. And so at this moment, I could have stressed and said, okay, I need to go to the emergency room. I need to like tough the traffic. I need to go in and be seen at this place that probably has much bigger problems than somebody coming in with shingles. But you know, I didn't realize that at the time. Now I've been seen. I went to the doctor today, and he thought the same thing. He said that it looks like it's shingles, but shingles, the important thing about that is to be seen the same day, because you can only be treated within 24 hours of the first symptoms. And I didn't know that. I'd done about 4 minutes of reading on the topic. I think I might have read 1 or 2 articles on it. And so in my mind, I made it out to be much bigger than it was, which some people, it can be very, very serious, but all I've got was a little bit. It was a very mild, um, I experienced very mild symptoms of it. And since then, they've subsided. And that moment right there, though, between stressing over having to go into the emergency room and reading what I did online and, you know, the earthquake that had happened that day, I think that I made the right decision. And once I made the decision, I stopped stressing over it. I didn't think about it anymore. I thought, you know, I'm going to call him on Monday, and that's when I'm going to go in. And Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the whole rest of the weekend, I just focused on the damage that had been done to my house. You know, like there was glass everywhere. Things were everywhere. I had a neighbor whose whole yard cracked and the ground and the sewage was coming up into their house. Another neighbor who didn't have earthquake insurance, and all of the tools and equipment that was in their garage fell on their vehicle. And I don't know if it totaled their vehicle, but it did a significant amount of damage. And I ran into somebody at the store whose whole house moved off of her foundation. And with a $15,000, she did have insurance, but it's $15,000 deductible. And then on top of that, the school had serious damage. One of the schools are not going to even be able to open back up. They're trying to figure out how they can move this. I think it was a middle school children integrate it into other surrounding high school areas. And there's a road that's completely wrecked. I mean, the list goes on and on. I think 2 of the hospitals had portions of the hospitals cave in. And people all around me have had hundreds and thousands of dollars, life-changing damage, life-changing issues because of this earthquake. And I've, you know, got a broken mirror and some broken glass, and I was able to clean it up, and it was a little bit of work, but there's no significant house damage. And I do feel like that has a lot to do with Abraham teachings, because even when I was younger, and so I think that I've got a little bit of an advantage in this sense, but when I was very young, you know, I always just believed that I was blessed. I just was, I don't want to say special, but things just always worked out for me. And so to hear Abraham, when she talks about it, she says in some of her meditations, things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. And I've always kind of had that, I don't want to say subconscious, because in the back of my mind, things are always working out for me. I really shouldn't have to worry about stuff because things always work out for me. And so that really resonated with me, and I've been trying to enforce that. And I think in this situation has really shown itself in a very positive way, because things really did work out for me. And in the sense that I experienced much less damage than my neighbors and my peers and my fellow Alaskans. So hopefully this will continue, and I'll just learn more and more and get better and better at this. And have a good night, guys, or day, whenever you're watching this.